Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good.
It's a pleasure to be here with Indivisible Hope, with this beautiful community. It's a gorgeous community, and with Indian Valley Democrats. My name is Madeleine Dean. I'm state representative. I always come armed with a map, but Bob, you did such a marvelous job. I'm going to rest my map here because, you know what? Do you have the one that shows the fourth more complete? What I want to tell you about is a little bit about me, my public service, and why I'm running for Congress, and what I hope to bring to my public service. Number one, this is a historic time. Montgomery County, for the first time in more than 30 years, has a seat at the table. As Bob showed you, yes. It's historic, and I am so excited for what this can mean and will mean for Montgomery County. As you see here, as we exist now, we are chopped into 5 congressional districts. We have 5 congressmen who represent us. Not one lives in Montgomery County. Think of it now. With this, you're going to have a representative that lives in Montgomery County who will be thinking about Montgomery County and how do we grow the economy of Montgomery County. So I'm very excited about the historic nature of this fair district, and I'm pleased with the Supreme Court. I am a state representative. I represent the part down here that is Abington and Upper Dublin. I came into public service in my 50s. I ran for Josh Shapiro's seat when he moved on to county government, and I am honored to be state representative. This week marked my 6th year because I came in a special election. I love representing my hometown. I grew up in Glenside. It's a real honor and a privilege. What I fight for in Harrisburg are things that I think you think are important. I believe you think are important. Education funding, fully educating, funding the education of our young people, our public school education. Protecting the environment, protecting seniors, making sure, and I've introduced legislation on each one of these fronts. Protecting our environment, making sure we fully fund the DEP, and I'll make that same fight with the EPA in Washington. And ethics and good government. One of the things that I knew that when I became elected was that I was not going to take a per diem. I publish my expenses every single month. I put in actual receipts for actual expenses incurred. I think I owe you that. I think I owe accountability and transparency in all that I do, because public service is among the highest callings. But then the other thing that I care deeply about is growing our economy. That's why I think this is so exciting, to have a representative in Washington, D.C. to be tackling all of these fronts, but making sure that we grow the economy, the beautiful, diverse economy that is this Montgomery County. One of the things that people say, well, why you? I hope you'll know that in my past life, what I was as a young woman, I was a lawyer. I practiced law in Philadelphia, Montgomery County. In my middle career, I taught at LaSalle University for 10 years. But I knew I wanted to get into public service. So in a very unplanned way, my previous 2 careers really prepared me for my present legislative experience and the fights that I have put up in Washington, in Harrisburg. 2 anecdotes that I'll tell you real quickly that might reveal a little bit about me is, number 1, I remember the first time I spoke on the floor of the House as a freshman. I was a few weeks in, and they had a terrible bill, a payday lending bill, so I stood up to speak. And later the speaker said to me, "You really should not have done that." I said, "I don't understand." "Freshmen don't speak. You just sit and you listen." I said, "Well, I don't know if I'll ever get to be a sophomore. I'm here. I'm elected. I'm going to speak. I will speak, and I will fight against ill-advised legislation like that." In 2012, I was a freshman when Sandy Hook happened. I started the PA Safe Caucus. Again, I was told, freshmen don't start caucuses. I said, well, I didn't get that memo. So we started the PA Safe Caucus. I've had the pleasure of working with Shira on the issue of gun violence and fighting in Harrisburg to demand that we get some of these bills up for a vote. We are finally making a little headway. We finally had 5 days of hearings, and I give the Parkland students and the advocates and the grassroots people credit for that. So I'll end with this notion. I want to take these fights to Washington at this historic time. This historic map meets my public service at a historic, chaotic time in Washington, D.C., at a time when our rhetoric has been debased, when our public debate has been debased, when division is more exciting or more important to some leaders than bringing people together and solving problems. I hope you'll consider voting for me. My name is Madeleine Dean. Next Tuesday is the election. I've amassed terrific support. I got the Inquirer endorsement. I got Emily's List endorsement, ACLU, AFL-CIO, many labor folks, Planned Parenthood, and a host of political leaders, including Governor Rendell, a couple of mayors. So I would really be honored for your vote and your support. And I have some team members here if anybody wanted to do any volunteering or helping out. Again, it's Madeleine Dean running for the 4th, in all the confusion, running for the 4th Montgomery County. And I'd be honored to take your questions.
4.5 minutes.
I did okay? I've got 4.5 minutes. Oh, there we go, yes. Do we get a mic back, or how do we do this?
Would you please suggest phrasing, language, for us as Democrats to talk to each other, describing your views on women's reproductive rights?
Oh, thank you for that question. And language matters. Our words matter. That's what I taught for 10 years at LaSalle University. My father was a fantastic writer, and he drummed into, with the 7 children, I'm the youngest of 7, he drummed into us, and in fact assigned essays every week down in the summer, which he would mark every weekend with his red pencil. So I'm a little shell-shocked from that. But it really matters. Your words matter, and that's one of the causes that I have. It's tempting when I'm in Harrisburg and we're debating on the floor of the House some very ill-advised, some very unwise bills that affect women's reproductive health. It's tempting to be shouting or to be saying this is insane, but we mustn't do that. We must resist that. And so what I try to do is, A, tell personal stories. I'm going to give you an example. One of the bills that we took a look at and that you know passed, but thank goodness the governor vetoed, was one iteration of it was called House Bill 1948. And what it was making abortion illegal and criminalizing the D&E procedure after 20 weeks. Criminalizing the procedure actually earlier than that, but making abortion illegal after 20 weeks. What I try to say is consider, did we have any hearings on this? No. Was there any medical input on this? No. Where did the language of these bills come? You can see the same language all across the country. It's either ALEC-driven or some other ideology-driven. And so what I say is it reasonable legislation? And I actually sought, and we had testified, medical doctors, obstetricians, gynecologists, who would advise that how ill-advised this was. The other thing that we did was we had very courageous members of families, women, who had to undergo very difficult pregnancies and very difficult choices after the 20-week mark, who wanted their pregnancies desperately. And so when you hear these personal stories, I think it impressed people that heavens, maybe we, a legislature of 82% men, might not be the best to be doing this. To me, it is sad we're still having this fight. You would have thought these decisions were decided long ago. But I recall, my own mother-in-law, who her mother died in childbirth. This was Scranton in the 1930s. And they were told that the mother was going to die, which had a risk of dying, and the baby was not going to live. But it was the 1930s, Scranton in a Catholic hospital. And I'm a Catholic, so don't get me wrong. That choice was taken away from that family. She delivered a deceased baby, and she died. My mother-in-law never knew her mother. I tell people, think of the stories, think of the personal choices. Why in God's name would we, as a set of legislators, tell physicians how to practice medicine and tell women how to make personal, critically personal choices? It's just, I think, inhumane. So I will protect a woman's right to her personal choices, her private choices, and protect families in that way.
Hi, I was an early childhood educator for over 25 years, and my passion is high quality, affordable, and accessible early childhood education for our young children.
Yes.
So I'd like to know where you stand on that.
Thank you for that question. I'm with you 100%. In Harrisburg, I fight for early childhood education, and you know that Governor Wolf has increased the budget proposal this year would, I think, get 3,000 to 4,000 3 to 4-year-olds into high quality pre-K if we could get this budget passed. What I would do in Washington is I would fight for universal pre-K, high quality pre-K. We know the difference that pre-K makes with 3 and 4-year-olds. But we also know that once we've prepared them and begun that learning experience, and thank you for what you've done, we have to also then have them go into quality schools. Because we also know that all the gains that they have, the sponges that they are, and eagerness for learning, often gets lost if we put them into poor performing schools. So we have to make sure we adequately and excellently fund all of our schools. And then the third, that was a bell. And to finish it off, in terms of education funding, I'd call for free community college. We absolutely should give that. And the final thing, and I know your families are burdened by it, my families are burdened by it, it should be interest-free student loans.
Please don't forget infants and toddlers, because learning begins at birth.
You're right. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I think I'm at my time. Am I right? Thank you very much.